Welcome back to our Global High-Tech Solution Kits YouTube channel on lecture 00. Before we started this lecture, I highly encourage you to complete some Google search in the internet and learn about what is API and how does it work. I'll be going through all of them, but I want you to make sure you're just familiar with the API. What is it and how does it work? Let's get started and jump on the topics. So today we'll be discussing about what is API, how does it work, how to test API, postman installation, send sample request, and the response. So what is API? I always hear about, I heard about API testing in quality assurance discipline. So what is API? So API testing is a software testing that analyze an application program interface to verify that it fulfills its expected functionality, security, performance, and reliability. An API is a code that enables the communications exchange of the data between two software programs. An application typically consists of multiple layers, including an API layers. API layers focus on like as a business logics in the application, as opposed to user interface UI testing, which is focused on validation the application looks and feels. API testing focus on analyzing the application business logics as well as the security and the data response. An API test is generally performed by the requesting one or more API endpoints and comparing the response and with expected results. So also more example, like if you go to the any shopping website, think about the website has a main service domain, say main domain, which is a, let's say amazon.com, right? Amazon.com is a main domain. Then after the Amazon, whatever you see, you will have like as a shoppings, retail shoppings, right? Then any other shoppings, those are a resource. Let's go to the amazon.com, and you see over here the amazon.com, this is called a domain, and after the Amazon, like is a GP, this is called a resource endpoint, and after the GP and card, the card view HTML, this is called a parameters or arguments. So in order to testing API, we need three things: service endpoint, which is the main domain; resource endpoint, which is a GP; and after the service endpoint, we will need arguments or parameters. So parameters can be two type. One is the query parameter. If you see question mark, that is a query parameter, and if you don't see the question mark, that is a regular parameters. Now hope you understand what do you need in order to start manually testing your API or automatically testing your API. You will be needing three things: service endpoint, resource endpoint, argument, or parameter. Parameter can be two types: query parameter or regular parameters. Also another example, in the Amazon, once you go to the cart, there will be a PayPal service. So PayPal is a different companies, right, providing a service for pay, like doing the transaction payment. So that is the different API. So that PayPal API connect with the Amazon APIs. It's behind the scene. Behind the scene, it is working, right? Once you clicked on add to cart some product and trying to paying through the PayPal, you have to click on the PayPal Pay, right? Then it will take you to the PayPal and authenticate it, then sending the money to the Amazon. So this is how it's work on the behind the scene. Let's go back to our topics. So now we know what is API and what do we need in order to start testing API testing. Now, what things can be validated in API? So there will be a couple of things. Number one is the status code. Once you send the request on the endpoints, you have to validate the status code. Then also you have to validate the error codes. And also you need to validate the response time, how quick that API response from the server, like the SLA, a service level agreement. So that is all be already defined by the product. Data quality, which is a data structure or the format, like as a JSON schema. Once you get a response that has a JSON format, and that format has a schema like structure of it, that has to be validated. And also confirmation of the authentications. If the endpoints using the authentications, it could be many authentications, right? Like as a no auth, API key, bearer token, JWT bearer, basic auth, digest auth, auth1, auth2, right? AWS signatures. So those are the authentications. It has to be confirmed with it. So as we discussed, what do we need in order to start API testing, manually or automatically? We need a service endpoint, resource endpoint, and arguments. And how to test API manually? So we can use the Postman. So Postman is an open source tool. We can send request and get the response from the server. So we'll be seeing some example endpoints from the internet, which is one of the URL you can use, which is called a RecRes. If you go to the RecRes website, this is look like RecRes website. So it has some samples endpoints, list of users, single users, list resource, which is on the left hand side. You guys are seeing get, post, put, patch, and on the right hand side you see the request and the response, right? So get, post, patch, put, delete, those are HTTP methods. In order to sending a request for the web service RESTful service. Web service, basically, like there is a two type of web service. One of them it's called a RESTful service, another one is called a SOAP service. So we are going to be giving you some example with the RESTful service today. So not touching the web service. So RESTful service has a HTTP methods. Those method, it's called a get, post, put, patch, delete. So those method it cannot modify or delete. This comes by default. But in SOAP service, you can create your own method. That is the main difference, SOAP and REST. So now let's go ahead and see. So we'll be sending the request with the get list of users. Click on the first request. Then once you send the request, it's supposed to be see as a response this one, right? So let's go ahead and copy that one and open up our Postman. So this is the Postman. Once you download from the internet as a Postman download, then you will have something like that as a Postman. So create a collection, new collection, rename the collection. You can rename it anything you want. Rename, that's called a learning Postman or learning RESTful service, right? So inside the learning RESTful service, we'll create a request. So that request, you can select all the HTTP methods, get, post, put, patch. So whatever the endpoints comes with the method, so you have to select that one. So that's mean this endpoints comes with get. So we are selecting get. Then it says the get meanings. If you go back to our documentations, you will see some other example as well as with the get. So now those are the HTTP protocol and the protocol method, like post, get, put, patch, right? So on the post meanings you are creating. So you're supposed to be getting 201 status code. And the 404 not found, 409 conflict, get meaning read. You are able to read the data or fetching the data from the database. So you will be getting the 200 status code. Put, update or replace. And patch, which is update or modify. So put is an update or replace, and patch is an update or modify. Basically all are you are getting a 200 except post. which is a 201 created. So once you create something, you will get 201 response. Please remember. So those are the status code and the HTTP protocol method you have to learn. You have to memorize it. And once you start working on it, you will get familiar with it. Delete means you are deleting the resource, which is a 200 status code. So now all the status code over here, I posted successful status code, information status code 100 to 199, successful status code 200 to 299, redirection message 300 to 399, client error response 400 to 499, server error response 500 to 599. So anything like on the request and response, you will be getting 100 to 500. So that means any status code you are getting, you will be able to grasp on that status code. Hey, if you get 400 status code, it's supposed to be no, this is the client side error message. If you get 500 status code, it's supposed to be no, this is the server side error message, right? So I want you to just go through with all the documentations and learn about status code and the HTTP protocol methods. Now go back to our Postman. Once you send the request as a sample request get from the request and click on send, you are getting the response, the same response which is in the website. In the website you are getting over here, same response. So that's mean you see the 200 status code on the bottom. So that's mean you are the request which is you are sending to the database sending a response with the status code to, okay, that's been, it is successful. Now the rest of the part we'll be seeing in the later video, like how to validate the response, how to create a test assertion for on this response, how to validate the assertion, how to validate the like JSON schema. Everything we'll be seeing in the upcoming video. Thank you so much for watching this lecture. Stay tuned for upcoming lecture for rest of this course.